Welcome to the Ember Wing Collective podcast. I'm Kimberly Beer.
And I'm Vicki Dorica.
Hey, Vicki, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good on this cold November morning.
Yeah, it's getting to be the time of year when it is Thanksgiving. As a matter of fact, I think this episode actually comes out the day after Thanksgiving.
Yep, I think you're right. Yeah.
So we're on the other side of we haven't experienced Thanksgiving, so we don't have the full bellies and the turkey food coma that a lot of people listening to this might have experienced. But that lovely season of let's be thankful and gratitude and grateful and all of that kind of stuff. And that's our topic for today.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we've talked a lot about this kind of in our pre-talk for this episode. And there's this concept and notion around gratitude, and that if you are grateful, then you will be happy. Like that's a key to happiness. And I know we have both discussed that there are times when that doesn't feel in alignment.
Yes.
When it doesn't feel like that's part of the story. Yeah. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I was, processing a lot of my personal work and I was encouraged to do a gratitude journal at heart, first it was very hard because sometimes it's hard to hold the hard stuff and still see the good stuff that's in my life, right? But I think that's the whole point of learning to shift the focus and seeing the things in your life that really light you up and acknowledging that you are grateful or you're thankful that those things are in your life or those people or beings are in your life. And so, yeah.
And it's interesting because this morning, and this is totally off of what we've discussed because it happened this morning. So this morning in my meditation practice that I do, contemplation, I'm not going to call it meditation because I'm not the sit and om kind of person. I am the actively contemplate something. And I many times will let card deck or an oracle deck or something bring up the topic for me if I don't have something that I really want to sit with. And I'm very open to whatever comes up. And this morning, the card that appeared for me was a light spear. And I won't get into the whole thing about what card that is out of what deck, but basically the concept was to focus, like to get and stay focused. And the spear of light brought with it victory. And sometimes I think that is when we sit with gratitude, as a practice, one of the things that we're being asked to do is to laser in on focus on the thing that we are grateful for. But that does not mean that there aren't a lot of other things attached to it because there's more than just that spear on the battlefield. Does that metaphor make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I know I've been raised to say thank you, even when I don't mean it. Like I was taught to be grateful for what I have. And as a woman born in the 1960s and living through the 70s and 80s, I think my mother watched me do things that she didn't have access to. And when I was whiny about it, about some ways I was being treated in corporate America, she's like, hey, you have a seat at the table. You should be thankful you have a seat at the table. And I look around my life today and go, it's not just enough to have a seat at the table. I want everything that goes along with that. And so there was that moment of the light spear to be thankful for I have a seat at the table, but that does not eradicate the fact that there's a lot of other things at the table.
Right. Yeah. I agree. Don't settle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, exactly. So yeah, what did your parents teach you about being grateful?
Please and thank you. I don't ever remember them actually using the word. Well, I do. I should take that back. Grateful wasn't a common word. Let's put it that way. Grateful was not a common word. They used thankful a lot. You should be thankful. But yes, the whole please and thank you. So politeness is just a way of being in the world to me. That doesn't necessarily mean there's like authentic attachment to the word. You say it to be polite.
Exactly. I think that's exactly what that is supposed to be. It is supposed to be you're being polite, right? And there's a different texture to gratitude and thankful because thankful is sitting in appreciation of what somebody else or what situation gave you, whereas grateful is sitting in your own embodiment and being at peace and feeling positive about whatever that happens to be. That's how I weigh those two things. How do you weigh the difference between the two?
I think you just described it very nicely that there is a difference, and gratitude does have an embodiment to it that thankful really doesn't, it's,
Yeah, thankful feels external to me.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas gratitude feels very internal.
Yeah. What a beautiful way to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would also think that gratitude is more of a presence where thankful is more of a fleeting kind of a situation. Like it moves quickly in and out of your life, whereas grateful tends to cling and hang on, or if we want to view a nicer metaphor, wraps around you like a blanket and comforts you in speaking. I think there's a quality and a texture difference between the two things. But I think in our culture and a lot of the ways I was raised, thank you was probably more important than grateful. And sometimes the word grateful got used as thankful. So you should be grateful that that wasn't worse, or you should be great. And I love that context of
Yeah. Wow.
negativity, right?
Ouch.
You should be grateful that that was not a worse thing that happened to you, or you should be
Right.
grateful things that things aren't bad.
And I mean, just to expand on that thought for a second, it really minimizes the experience for you, right? And yeah, so there's layers to that sentence. Be grateful
Yeah.
that it wasn't worse. Ay.
Yeah. But how many times we get told that?
As a child, I can't even say how many times, right?
Yeah,
It
but
was
even as an
just part of
adult,
that is true too. That is true too. Yeah.
I think about a doctor, and I can't put my finger on exactly what this is. Well, no, I can. It had to do with when I was very first diagnosed with fibroids. And I had a doctor tell me, because for a little while there was a lot of concern that that might be cancer. And I had a doctor told me, well, if you have cancer, that's a good cancer to have. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, be grateful that you don't have one of the worst ones. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't want any of it. Like, I don't want to be grateful. We talked about this earlier. I don't want to be grateful for scraps. And that's true
Yes.
whether it's in my health or whether it is that seat at the table in corporate America, or as a small business owner, or as a bigger business owner for that matter, or as a woman walking through the world around here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. And
Yeah.
we've definitely been taught to be grateful for scraps.
Yeah. You do a lot of work with sexual assault survivors. And I think we, as a culture, I think that this sentiment sometimes is problematic in
It
that
is.
context.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's some minimization that occurs that adds another layer of insult and hurt, and it's coming from a person that's close to you that knows your story. And so sometimes that can feel a little bit like betrayal as well, that they don't understand, that they really don't get the experience. And so, yeah, words are important, and saying and knowing the difference, I guess, between thankful and grateful, in surface level and embodiment is important as well.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of people out there listening have taken the step of wanting to be more embodied and grateful. And part of that step has included keeping a grateful journal, a gratefulness journal. And I have done that as a practice. And I did find benefit in it from the space I was in at the time. I don't know if it would be the same for me now. I don't keep that practice, but I try to be more embodied and grateful and more embodied in connection. What was your experience with gratefulness journals?
Again, it was way back, I incorporate it differently now in my journaling practice. But when I kept a very separate gratefulness journal, some days were hard and I'm like, I'm grateful the sun came up, right? I
Yeah,
had to start really big because I hadn't sharpened the point of that light spear that you were talking about earlier, right? Where I could notice the little tiny things that really make up the world and make them beautiful. So I started grand. And then as I processed my work and as I got into the practice of noticing things and people and beings that I was just grateful for having in my life, then my journaling changed and my gratitude journal changed. And that was a big step. And I think the part of the power of journaling like that is you can open the book at the beginning and see kind of where you were. And you can visually read your growth in how,
absolutely.
So I like the idea of a gratitude jar. And
Interesting.
yeah. And that's just at the end of the day, writing on a slip of paper, one thing that you are grateful for that day, right? And so you write it down and then you fold it up and you put it in the jar. And then at the end of the year, you can just rustle your hands around, pull one out and read it. And you
Yeah.
have 365 days of memories and things that you can look back on and go, wow, yeah, that impacted me. Again, that internal gratitude is more of an internal focus and support. So I like gratitude jars.
I like a gratitude jar as well. And that doesn't have the pressure of you've got to find it every single day.
Right.
Yeah. So I use the Mona planner as my planner. Yes, I use a paper planner, even though I have claimed the moniker of cyber sorceress. Digital things do not work for me. And I don't think they work for a lot of people when it comes to do stuff, especially those of us who, as my friend Betsy puts it, are neurospicy. So we are not quite built the same as and I honestly think that only about 12% of the population is built to that particular paradigm of what typical digital planners would work for. They don't work for me. I have tried. And I've had some beautiful ones. But this particular this particular planner has a little box down here at the bottom. And if you can see, mine is blank, even though you can't see the words on the thing because they're blurred out because of my filter. But there's a box right here, and the line is "Today I am grateful." And you know what's interesting? When I first got these planners, I would fill that out every single day. But now I don't fill it out at all. I will contemplate it though.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the interesting thing I've found about keeping like that written gratitude journal situation that, like you talked about at first, it's really grand notions, and then it starts to become little tiny things. And if we consider gratitude as an embodiment practice, as a presence practice, I think there comes the moment when you're grateful in the moment, and the thing that you have found, or the feeling or the vibe or whatever it happens to be, it happens in that moment, and it's a very embodied experience. Whereas sometimes when you sit and have to think about it, it gets more into that intellectual headspace instead of in your body
Sure.
space. And I look around my world and I look for moments like that. And one that I had the other day, I'm interested as I'm saying this, if you'll share a moment that you've had lately of gratitude as well. But Nick and I had been out doing chores, and all of the horses were eating and the goats were eating. Like, we had just finished up things, and the cats were all on the porch with their dinner, and like everybody was just munching happily around, and you can hear all of the sounds of everybody eating. And I was just getting ready to walk back in the house because we were kind of complete, and the sun was setting, and the air was nice and warm. It was just like a really perfect moment. It's that perfect full kind of moment. And
Mhm.
in that moment, I was like, God, I wish I could freeze time, like right here. And I think that that notion there was the embodiment of gratitude for that moment. Like, here it is. Everything is at peace. Everybody around here is healthy. Everything is working. Everybody is satisfied. Bellies are getting filled. It's not miserably cold or unbearably hot. It's just, and as farmers, trust me, as those of us who have to spend a lot of time outside, the weather matters. Like
It
what the
does.
temperature is matters. And so it was just that lovely embodiment of that particular moment. And it was otherworldly to sit in that moment. It was a connection that was beyond. So that is an experience that I've had lately where I think I felt the full embodiment of gratitude.
Yeah, that was beautiful, by the way. Thank you for sharing that. For me, so like last week, a couple weeks ago, we had the sunburst, I guess the energy sunburst, the
Yeah.
CME, right?
Yeah.
And so it allowed it, the whole, I don't know the whole science of it, but I do know that in our area, we could see the northern lights, the aurora borealis at our longitude, latitude space. And so we couldn't see that here, but I was out looking outside at night anyway, just to make sure I couldn't see. And one thing that I used to do, I used to live in Colorado, and I lived on the very edge of Denver, the eastern edge of Denver. And so there was not a lot of light pollution at the time that I lived there. And I would go out on my deck at night, and part of my ritual, my bedtime ritual, was to go out and just look at the stars. And, I could look up and see Orion and just be in the space and realize the connection with something bigger than myself. And it was a beautiful practice. I live in
Yeah,
downtown
you live in light pollution central where you're
Yes, I
at.
do. Yes, downtown Kansas City is a different vibe. And so I stopped looking at the stars because I couldn't see them from my house, right? Obviously, I could get in my car and drive somewhere. But the other night when I was looking for the northern lights in my backyard, I turned to the southeast and was looking, which is not where the northern lights would be anyway. But I looked up, and for the first time, I saw Orion again.
Yeah.
And
That's like
and
coming
I
home.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful moment because I literally just stopped everything and was just in awe, right? And there's that moment of where I was grateful that I had looked for something that I knew I wasn't going to see from my space, which was the Northern Lights. And yet I still took the time to go do it. And I guess the gift of that moment of doing that action was that I got to reconnect to something that I haven't seen in a very long time. And it was extremely beautiful. And I was grateful. And I felt it in my body, that pause, that whole, I guess, moment in time thing that you were talking about, where it just stopped for a second, freeze, and let me experience this, because it feels you up, right? It was a soulful moment. And that's what gratitude, I guess, means to me in a way, is that, yeah, it was just that connection. And so that's my experience here lately, that's been I was deeply grateful for that moment. And again, it was a moment, like you're saying.
Yeah, and that's the wonderfulness. I had a boyfriend one time that he was divorced and he was struggling with his ex-wife. And I'm like, he was very cranky a lot. I'm like, if you could get more in touch with your gratefulness, this was a little was a little pre-enlightened me. I'm like, you should keep a gratefulness journal and see, that maybe focusing on the positive things might help you. And me miss positive, like got to keep everything on the upbeat.
Right.
And it's my job, no, it's not, by the way. I have figured that out for those of you who are like, no, that's not your job. Well, at the time I thought it was my job. But I noticed he really put these huge things in there. And I'm like, dude, you got to look at the smaller things. Like, you've got to look at those moments that are both mind-blowingly huge and yet a moment. Like the looking up at the stars, or, being in that moment where it's like, wow, everything right in this moment is good. It is a good moment. is a
Right.
good moment. So I know that people listening to this have, if you listen to it when it comes out, which our listenership is really small right at the moment, so you may be listening this to way down in the future if you come back to it. But the holidays in particular, I think, put a lot of pressure on us to say what we're grateful for or to be grateful for things. And in 2025, I think being sometimes with your family and keeping yourself in an embodied gratefulness is very contradictory. I think that can be a stretch for a lot of people. And um, I think that my thoughts around that are sure you take care of you and that you do the best you can to be in your authenticity as much as possible.
I agree. I
Yeah,
agree.
I think that's important. And you had mentioned a practice that I've never participated in, which is Friendsgiving.
Yeah, that's fun because it's very intentional, right? And who you're welcoming into communion with, I guess. I mean, it really is. But having a circle of friends, and it can be relative, there could be family ties there too as part of the Friendsgiving. But I think that it is looking at those people around you that make up your world and offer connection and being able to break bread with them is such a beautiful thing. And I think there's an opportunity to deepen connections that maybe were a little more generalized, and taking them deeper and doing that through an event or a ceremony like Friendsgiving.
Yeah. And when I sit with people and talk with them, especially in my entrepreneurial space, as well as the photographers, I border in a lot of different things, but people that I talk to are seeking that, like actively looking for opportunities to be able to deepen relationships rather than keep them up on the surface. And I think we all thought social media was going to offer us deeper relationships, and I think it definitely caused them to be even more surface than anything else. And I think those deeper friendships are great. And I think that also may give you the fuel that you need to carry you through your holiday with a family who you may or may not get along with. I know for me growing up, Thanksgiving was always a burden for my mother. Like she did not like the whole, I think part of it was because she had to clean her house and she didn't like housework. Like that was not her favorite thing to do. And I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but I was raised to be an angry cleaner. Like that's the way the house got clean. I learned that from my mother. It took me a really long time. I was embarrassingly old before I figured out, wait a minute, that's really not the way I want to approach like my home or cooking or anything. But my mother had to be pissed off in order to do it. And if I'm going to tell you, if she was not pissed off, she would figure a way to get herself in that state.
Mhm.
And I inherited that as a pattern because I watched it happen over and over and over again. And the interesting thing about it is that as she got older and I took over Thanksgiving, which was after my dad passed away, and it was a different affair when I did it. What was funny is I didn't have to be angry. And it took me a little while to reconcile that because I almost felt guilty for enjoying Thanksgiving. Like, I was like, I like this whole cooking notion. I love and now, I mean, it's Nick and I. We are the people here eating Thanksgiving. It is the two of us. And you might think I'm nuts, but I will cook all day on Thursday. I make the full spread like I am cooking for 20 people. And I love every single minute of it. And I'm a few years ago when I was doing it, I'm like, why was my mother so angry at this process? Because it really isn't hard. And it's actually kind of fun to be able to do that. So, yes, there's bearing a little of my childhood trauma and ancestral trauma and how that kind of floats down into holiday tradition.
Sure.
So, but it's interesting in the holiday aspect of whether you show up with like a true embodied gratefulness or that thankfulness. Now, after my mom died and I started to spend it with my cousins, I am not always on the same page as my cousins, but I dearly love them. And what was interesting was that was the only time of year that I really connected with them. The cousins that I went to their home, their kids and I are still like I still talk to their kids, but both of them are gone off the planet. But what was funny was is all of the chaos that was their house was very much the opposite of what was in my house. Like they had kids everywhere and like it just was chaotic. And I'm like, this is sort of fun to sit in the chaos of somebody else's world
Right.
and to be grateful for the peace I have at home. But I took my own, like I lived in my own space before I went, and then I got to enjoy it. And then I got to come back home. So I don't know if any of that helps anybody reconcile. Like if your mother is an angry cooker, angry Thanksgiving hostess, maybe go, wait a minute, that could be some ancestral trauma trickling down. If you're the angry hostess, maybe ask, is this ancestral trauma trickling down? Or if you can do so, just simply enjoy the chaos and be grateful for it.
Right.
And that is a true embodied gratefulness. I was not being grateful for it in a sarcastic way. I enjoyed watching it. I don't know. There was a hodgepodge of things in there. Do you have anything to add to that rather disjointed discussion?
Well, my childhood Thanksgivings were, I was going to say chaotic, but that wasn't the energy. It was busy because there were like 20 of us, so lots of different energies and personalities coming together. But it was full of laughter and love and fun adventures for me and my cousins, would go out when we would go to my grandmother's house, and she lived out in the country. And so, we were gone all day until they were like, be back at 2:00. And I was like, okay. And, we'd hit the fields and go exploring and stuff. So I don't know what happened in the kitchen as a kid because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so then as I got older and started to participate in the cooking aspect, it really was kind of standing there and watching. And my parents, when they took over doing the bigger meals, it was a division of labor. And my dad would do the turkey and then my mom would do the rest of them. So both of them were in the kitchen working together. So that was something that I got to watch and experience. And then it became me and my dad in the kitchen together. And then when he passed, it was me. My mom had stepped way back and she was like, no, I'll just hang out in the living room. Get out of your way. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So now it's me, even though I've got, 3 adult kids. They kind of do what I did when I was a kid, and that was disappear until it's time to eat.
Until it's time to eat.
Until it's time to eat. So I don't know what they're going to do when I no longer cook. But I enjoy it. And during that experience, because I do have a rhythm, I've been doing it for so long now, that, I time everything out and I have my rhythm. But there's also lots of opportunities for me to sit in embodied gratitude for the fact that a whole bunch of people came together to get this food on my, that I am cooking. And I do say thanks and really, honor the farmers and the field workers and the grocery store, the distribution trucks, and the whole line so that we could eat today. And that's how I use that holiday, quote unquote, to really amplify my gratitude, I guess, for that specific meal. But practice of gratitude is every day. And it always kind of irks me that we only have culturally, it's, oh, this is the season of gratitude. No other time during the year do we really culturally acknowledge it, but only this time.
It is a little sad that we only have one day that's really devoted to like global gratitude, thankfulness kind of a situation. Yeah, and by global, I mean us here in the United States. I would say probably other cultures and places have a lot better gratitude practices than we do here. So I'm just going to claim that for us in this space. So one of the practices that I have adopted in the last couple of years in the fall, it's not necessarily associated with Thanksgiving, but it is associated with this time of harvest, which is the grateful time of year in the cycles that happen here on the ranch. That is to create a simmer pot. And I know I'm not the only person who does this. I know you also do a simmer pot as well. So one of the things I want to offer people who are listening to this, Vicki and I are both going to provide simmer pot recipes to go along with this particular episode of what we put in a simmer pot. But the practice, if you've never done it, is relatively simple and it doesn't require anything special. I think the only thing I had to do the first time I did it was actually buy cinnamon sticks, which I didn't have kind of on hand. But it's a lot of things that you currently have on hand. So you just basically take a pot, put some ingredients in it, put a little water in there, and then just let it kind of sit on your stove and simmer for hours. And it fills your house with this beautiful aroma. And as you're putting the ingredients into the simmer pot, what you are doing is recognizing that ingredient's unique gift to you and your gratefulness for that specific gift. And some great symbolic ingredient ideas are orange slices, which are success, happiness, abundance, prosperity. Cinnamon sticks, love, prosperity, healing, warmth. And that also adds that, both of those things add that beautiful, lovely cloves for protection, because I think we all can be grateful for that. Rosemary for memory, which I do think gratefulness is very attached to memory.
I do too.
And yeah,
Yes.
gratitude and gratefulness both get attached to memory. Apple slices for wisdom and abundance. Bay leaves for success. One of the things that you can do is you can write on your bay leaf before you put it into your simmer pot, something that you're grateful for, something that you would like to bring success around. Vanilla is another great thing that adds a kind of that touch of sweetness and comfort. And then cranberries, which interestingly enough are the embodiment of gratitude and appreciation, which is interesting because that is a common fare for a Thanksgiving meal is to have cranberries on the table. So, and you know what's funny? In our family, we had cranberries every single year and very few times did anybody eat it. It kind of just sat there as a representation of cranberry.
Right.
And I didn't really realize the connection to that until much later.
Yeah. Growing up, the practice was to have cranberry sauce, on the table. And again, it really didn't get eaten. It was more just tradition.
So, and there's the interesting thing, because I know we talk about somewhat alternative spirituality that kind of moves over into things that move away from it. There's so many of our traditions that are in our everyday culture that we don't realize have a connection to a much older, more ancient wisdom. And they just get carried down and their connection is lost in that. Right. So even if you don't eat the cranberries at your holiday table, their presence there has that ancestral connection to gratitude and appreciation.
Right.
So I find that completely fascinating.
Yeah.
And the fact we don't eat them is a little weird. Although I do better now with it because we did at one of our events 2 years ago, the cook, there's a chef. His name is Joe. Joe is amazing. And he's at Cottonwood Ranch. He's at one of the ranches that we do a photography workshop at. And he made for lunch for us in August, nothing to do with holidays or anything else. He made for us cranberry turkey sliders. And I have to tell you, those things changed my entire world and thoughts around cranberry. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yes. Cranberry jalapeno jelly is amazing. Yeah.
There you go. Hey, that's spicy gratefulness.
That's right.
I love it. I love it. Goodness. All right, Vicki, do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
I can honestly say that if we're speaking and sharing our gratitude, that meeting you has been amazing. And I know that was like a gazillion years ago. But I truly am grateful for our friendship. So I just
Right
want you
back
to know
at you,
that.
friend. Right back at you, right back at you. Yes, I'm very glad that we were brought together in Colorado and then ended up near each other in Missouri.
Yeah,
So, even
for
though
sure.
it's not sometimes the happiest place on the planet, I'm definitely grateful you are here. So, for everyone out there, if you're interested, you can find links to the Emberwing Collective community in the show notes. We are officially launching probably around the first of the year, but we are accepting people in if you are interested in kind of giving some feedback. This is all still very new to us. So, if you're listening to this beyond November of 2025, and I'm sure in 2026, actually, anytime, I'm sure you'll find the community open and I invite you to come in and take a look around. So again, emberwingcollective.com. I hope to see you there.